Hey, welcome to today's podcast episode. I am your host, Abraham Emas. In my previous episode, I discussed about sticking to a budget and also gave some tips on how to stay on track with a budget. I moved on and covered the aspect of advanced budgeting techniques. In today's episode, I am going to be discussing about capital budgeting. For our new listeners joining us for the first time, I say a big welcome to you all. This is Abraham's Ideas Podcast. You can hit on the subscription button and the notification bell so you'll be the first to access all my new episodes. So let's get into today's episode, capital budgeting. I'm going to explain the concept of capital budgeting, and I'm going to explain the concept in different categories. Number one, capital budgeting is a crucial financial management process that involves determining and allocating resources for long-term investment projects that will yield significant returns over time. It is a process of evaluating, analyzing, and selecting investment opportunities to maximize a company's long-term profitability and value. Number two, capital budgeting is vital for companies because it involves significant financial commitments, often involving large amounts of money and long-term obligations. Capital expenditure typically have a significant impact on a company's financial performance, liquidity, and profitability. As a result, making sound investment decisions is essential to ensure that companies maximize their returns and achieve their long-term strategic objectives. Number three, the capital budgeting process involves a thorough evaluation of the potential investment, taking into account factors such as expected cash inflows and outflows, the project risk profile, and the company's cost of capital. It typically involves several stages, including identifying potential investment opportunities, screening them based on their financial viability and strategic fit, performing a detailed analysis of the selected opportunities, and ultimately making a decision based on the result of the analysis. Number four, the goal of capital budgeting is to allocate resources to projects that will generate the highest return on investment and create long-term value for the company's shareholders. By selecting the right project to invest in, companies can improve their profitability, competitiveness, and financial stability. Next step, methods of capital budgeting. I'll explain the different methods of capital budgeting. So let's get into it. Capital budgeting is a process used by businesses to evaluate and select long-term investment projects. The different method of capital budgeting helps businesses determine which projects are worth investing in and which ones should be rejected. So let's get into the first method. Number one, net present value, which is NPV, and I'm going to be using NPV to address it during the explanation. NPV is a method used to determine the present value of an investment by subtracting the initial investment from the present value of future cash flow. If the NPV is positive, the investment is considered profitable. The formula for calculating NPV is NPV equals to bracket CFT / bracket 1 plus arrow bracket close T bracket close minus CO. Let me explain the formula. CFT is the cash flow generated in a specific period T, such as a year or a month. Arrow is the discount rate, which represents the opportunity cost of investing in this project. The discount rate is the rate of return that could be earned by investing in an alternative project or investing with similar risks. CO is the initial cost or investment required to start the project. So what are the strengths of NPV, which is net present value? Number 1, accounts for the time value of money. Number 2, considers all cash flows over the project's life. It considers all cash flows over the project's life. Number 3, it provides a clear indication of profitability. So what are the weaknesses of NPV? Number 1, it requires an estimate of the discount rate, which may not be accurate. Number 2, can be difficult to calculate when cash flows are uneven or inconsistent. Next method. Number 2, internal rate of return, which is IRR. IRR is a method used to calculate the rate of return on investment. It is the discount rate at which the NPV of an investment equals 0. The formula for calculating IRR is NPV equals to CFT / bracket 1 plus IRR bracket close T bracket close minus CO equals to O. So what are the strengths of IRR, which is internal rate of return? Number 1, it accounts for the time value of money. Number 2, it provides a clear indication of profitability. Number 3, easy to interpret. It is easy to interpret. What are the weaknesses of IRR? Number 1, it can be difficult to calculate when cash flows are uneven or inconsistent. Number 2, it cannot be used when there are multiple IRRs. Next method, number 3, payback period. The payback period is a method used to calculate the time it takes to recover the initial investment. The formula for calculating the payback period is payback period equals to initial investment / annual cash flows. That is the formula. So what are the strengths of payback period? Number 1, it is easy to calculate and understand. Number 2, it provides a clear indication of how long it will take to recover the initial investment. What are the weaknesses of payback period? Number 1, it does not account for the time value of money. Number 2, it ignores cash flows after the payback period is completed. Next method. Number 4, profitability index, which is IP. IP is a method used to measure the profitability of an investment by comparing the present value of future cash flows to the initial investment. The formula for calculating PI, which is profitability index, PI, is PI equals to bracket present value of future cash flows / initial investment bracket close. What are the strengths of PI, which is profitability index? Number 1, it accounts for the time value of money. Number 2, it considers all cash flows over the project's life. Number 3, so what are the weaknesses of PI, which is profitability index? Number 1, it requires an estimate of the discount rate, which may not be accurate. Number 2, it ignores the size of the initial investment. In conclusion, each method of capital budgeting has its strengths and weaknesses. Businesses must carefully consider these factors when evaluating investment projects to determine the most appropriate method to use. So, this will be the end of today's episode. Remember, if you haven't subscribed yet, you can hit on the button so you won't miss any of my new episodes. In my next episode, I will cover how to calculate the NPV and the IRR methods of capital budgeting and more. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.